Hello everyone and welcome back once again. This is your history teacher here, and this time I am going to discuss the brand new chapter of grade 7 NCERT, our past, part 2nd, that is the Delhi Sultans. Students, this chapter, the Delhi Sultan, is very important, and in fact not only important, it is one of the interesting chapter of your syllabus. So students, what is this chapter regarding? Students, this chapter is all about the Delhi Sultans. And students, when we talk about this chapter, we basically get to know that there are a number of things which are very important for all of you to learn about Delhi. That is, that how Delhi became a king and how it became a capital city. Students, it is the most important part of this chapter. So students, in this chapter, we are going to learn and discuss a number of things about Delhi. Students, as you all know that in the present time, we call Delhi as our capital. So, if we call Delhi our capital city, then there is a question that how it happened. How Delhi became the capital of our country? Why no other city of India had been selected for the capital of our nation? So students, there are a number of questions in our mind whose answers we will get after discussing this chapter. So let's start. So students, the first topic of this chapter is the Delhi Sultans. Students, Delhi rose to its significance in the 12th century only, and it first became the capital under the kingdom of the Tomars Rajput. But later, Delhi was captured by the Chauhans of Ajmer, and students, under their rules, means under the Tomars and the Chauhans, Delhi became an important commercial and trading center on the map of India. So students, as soon as Delhi became commercially important, then many rich Jain merchants who lived in the city constructed several temples over there in Delhi. And students, not only temples, in fact, coins are also minted here in Delhi. And students, that time, coins were called as Dehliwal, and these coins had a wide circulation all over the city, and not in fact in city, in fact all over the nation. And students, the transformation of Delhi into a capital city started with the foundation of the Delhi Sultanate at the beginning of the 30th century. And students, the Delhi Sultans put Delhi on the geopolitical map of Southeast Asia, and they laid the foundation of modern city called Delhi. Now students, as you can see here in this image, these all are the different dynasties that rule over India. As the first one, you can see here the Rajput dynasties. Students, under the Rajput dynasties, the Tomar Rajputs were the first who ruled over India early 12th century. After the Tomar Rajput, the Delhi was ruled by under the Chauhan dynasty from 1165 to 1192. Then after Chauhans, the Delhi was ruled by under the Turkish rulers who ruled over here in India from 1206 to 1290. Then after the Turkish rulers, the Delhi was ruled by the Khilji dynasty who ruled here from 1290 to 1320. Then after Khilji dynasty, the Tughlaq dynasty ruled in India from 1320 to 1414. Then after Tughlaq dynasty, the Sayyid dynasty ruled here from 1414 to 1451. Then ultimately, after 1451, the Lodi dynasty ruled over here in India from 1451 to 1526. Students, do you know what is the meaning of dynasty? Students, dynasty means series of leaders, or you can say kings from the same family. As you can see here, the Qutbuddin Aibak from the Turkish dynasty was the first one who ruled over India from 1206 to 1210. Then after, the second ruler from the Turkish dynasty was Shamsuddin Iltutmish, who ruled over India from 1210 to 1236. Then after Iltutmish, her daughter became the new ruler of India, and she ruled over India from 1236 to 1240. So that's how we can say that all these rulers are from the same family. So students, dynasty means a series of rulers from the same family. Now students, let's discuss that how can we find more about the Delhi Sultans. Students, we can learn more about the Delhi Sultans by the Tariq or Tariq, that are the valuable history resources that gives us a lot of information about the Delhi Sultans. And students, here the word Tariq is the singular form of the word Tariq, and all the informations of the Delhi Sultans are basically written in the Persian language, because that time the Persian language was the language of administration under the Delhi Sultans. So all the information of that times about the Delhi Sultans were written in Persian. And students, that time these Tariqs were basically written by the learned man's secretaries, administrators, poets, and courtiers. And students, all these persons recounted events and advised the rulers that how they should govern. And students, they emphasized the rulers the importance of the just rule. Now students, here are some important points or ideas that you must keep in your mind, that the authors of Tariq, who basically wrote down these events, were lived in cities and hardly ever in villages. And students, do you know that why they wrote down these Tariq or Tariqs? Because they wrote this in the hope of rich rewards from the Delhi Sultans. And students, these authors advised rulers on the need to preserve the social order, which was discriminatory in nature. Students, as I said, that the writer of the Tariqs advised rulers on the need to preserve the social order, which was discriminatory in nature that time. But students, these ideas were not followed by everybody. And students, we will understand this topic by discussing a case study of Razia Sultan. Students, in 1236, Sultan Iltutmish's daughter Razia Sultan became first and the last female ruler of Delhi. And students, can you answer me why Iltutmish chose Razia as his successor? Students, Iltutmish chose Razia over his sons as his successor because she was more able and qualified than all her brothers. And students, how can we say that? Students, we can say that because Minhaj is Siraj, a chronicler of Raja Sultan times, wrote down on his book that she was more able and qualified than all her brothers. So we can say that that's why Iltutmish chose his daughter as his successor over his sons. But students, many were not comfortable with the idea of a queen as ruler. So she was removed from the throne in 1240. Now students, the next heading is from garrison town to empire. Students, do you know what are garrison towns? Students, garrison towns are basically those towns whose formation is a result of the setting up of a military base. And students, these towns are specifically designed for the purpose of military, navy or air force activities. And students, the main function of this garrison town is to cater the needs of defense and people employed in defense service of the nation. So students, in this topic we are going to discuss or learn that how Delhi became an empire from a garrison town. Students, in the early 13th century, the control of Delhi Sultans rarely went beyond the fortified towns, and Delhi faced many challenges from the Mongols and by the governors of the city itself, who rebelled again and again when they saw or noticed any signs of the Sultan's weakness. So students, this made Delhi Sultans to think about their strategy in order to control their empire. And students, the expansion of Delhi Sultanate took place under the reign of Ghiyasuddin Balban, Alauddin Khilji and Muhammad bin Tughlaq. And students, do you know how these rulers expand the Delhi Sultanate? Students, all these rulers expand Delhi Sultanate through their campaigns. And students, during the first set of campaigns, these rulers control over internal frontier and they made sure control over the hinterlands. Students, do you know what are hinterland? Students, hinterlands are the areas of a country that are basically away from the coast and from the banks of a large rivers or from the main cities. And students, why these hinterlands are so important? Because it has the ability to attract mass amount of buyers to that city. That's why during the first set of campaigns, the rulers of the Delhi Sultanate first control over these hinterlands. Now students, on the second expansion, the rulers of the Delhi Sultanate control over the external frontier and they campaigned into South India and captured elephant, horses, slaves and carried away precious metals in order to make Delhi powerful. And students, that's how the Delhi Sultans changed their strategy to control Delhi and save it from the Mongols and the governors. Now students, the next topic is the masjid. Students, a mosque is called a masjid in Arabic language, and it is basically a place where a Muslim prostrate in reverence to Allah. And students, in masjid, an imam is the most respected learned man who led rituals and Friday prayers, like us, a pandit in our temples. And students, in a congregational mosque means a mosque where many Muslims came together and offer prayers, means to say namaz together. And students, do you know that during their prayers in mosque, Muslims stand facing towards the Makkah. Do you know what is Makkah? Students, Makkah is the pilgrimage center of Muslims. And students, in India, this direction is towards the west. And students, this is known as Qibla, means offering prayers by standing facing towards the Makkah is known as Qibla. And students, as I said, that in a mosque, an imam is the most respected and learned man who led rituals and Friday prayers, and he also delivers the sermon, means to say the khutbah, during the Friday prayers. And students, Delhi Sultans built several mosques throughout the subcontinent, and out of these, Quwat al-Islam, means to say the Qutub Minar complex, was the first such mosque ever built. Now students, let's understand that how the Delhi Sultan administer and make their position of power firmer or stronger over Delhi Sultanate. Students, to have reliable governors, means to say the governors who were loyal towards the Delhi Sultanates, the Delhi Sultans relied on the slaves purchased for military service. And students, do you know the slaves that they purchased were known as bandagan or bandage in Persian. And students, especially Iltutmish favored their special slaves for military service. Students, similarly, in the same way, the rulers of the Khilji dynasty and Tughlaq dynasty also continue this system of bandage, and they also raised people of humble birth who were their clients, or we can say who were loyal towards them, to high position like governors and generals. And students, the rulers of the Khiljis and the Tughlaq dynasties appointed military commanders as governors of territories of varying size. And students, the territories that were under these Bandagan governors were known as Ikta, and the governors who were appointed over these lands were known as Mukti or Iktadar. And students, the duty of the Mukti or the Iktadar is to maintain law and order in their Iktas, means to say their land, and in exchange of their services, they collected the revenue as their salaries, and they also paid to their soldiers from these revenue and run other affairs. And students, under Alauddin Khilji and Muhammad Tughlaq, accountants were also appointed to check the amount collected by the Muktis, means to say the Iktadars who were appointed over these pieces of land. And students, as we discussed earlier, that the Delhi Sultans during their first campaign controlled over the hinterlands. And students, when Delhi Sultans brought the hinterland under their control, then they forced the Samantas or the rich landlords to accept their authority over themselves. And students, meanwhile, the attack of Mongols under the ruler Genghis Khan forced the rulers of or the sultans of the Khiljis and Tughlaq dynasties to mobilize a large standing army in Delhi in order to protect it. Now students, let's discuss that what happened to the Delhi Sultanate during the 15th and the 16th century. Students, after the Tughlaqs, the Sayyid and Lodi dynasty ruled from Delhi and Agra until 1526. But by then, Jaunpur, Bengal, Malwa, Gujarat, Rajasthan and entire South India had independent rulers who had established their own flourishing states and prosperous capitals. And in fact, new ruling dynasties like the Afghans and the Rajputs also arose during this period, means to say from the 15th and the 16th century. And students, after the Sayyid and the Lodi dynasty, in 1526, Mughals laid down the foundation of Mughal dynasty in India. But Shah Suri challenged and defeated the then Mughal Emperor Humayun, and then Shah Suri captured Delhi after defeating the Mughal Emperor Humayun and laid down the foundation of Suri dynasty over there in Delhi. Students, although Shah Suri ruled only for 14 years, and that is from 1540 to 1555, but the way of his administration became the model role for the great Mughal Emperor Akbar, who ruled over India from 1556 to 1605. And students, in fact, Akbar also consolidated the Mughal empires in the same way as Shah Suri administered his empire. Students, as I said that Shah Suri ruled over India from 1540 to 1545, and he started his career as a manager of a small territory for his uncle in Bihar, and he eventually challenged and defeated the then Mughal Emperor Humayun, and then captured Delhi and laid the foundation of his own dynasty, means to say the Suri dynasty. And students, as we discussed that he ruled over India for 14 years. And students, Shah Suri borrowed the elements, or you can say borrowed the style of administration from Alauddin Khalji and made his empire more efficient. And due to this, the Mughal Emperor Akbar also took his style of administration in his own campaign during the consolidation of the Mughal Empire. Now students, that's all about your chapter, and with this topic here, your chapter number 3 is completed. Now I will be come back soon with another chapter. Till then, stay home, stay safe and stay healthy.